Welcome to XYPN Radio, where your host Alan Moore brings you into a community of fee-only financial planners who want to profitably and successfully serve Gen X and Gen Y clients. If you're ready to get the knowledge you need from leaders in your field, learn from forward-thinking advisors, and take action on your own goals, XYPN Radio is the show for you. Here's your host.
Hello and welcome to this episode of XYPN Radio. I'm your host, Alan Moore, and I'm excited to have XYPN member Tara Unverzagt, founder of South Bay Financial Partners, on the show today. Tara knew from an early age that she wanted to be a financial planner, as her mom was one of the early pioneers of the financial planning profession. She took a detour through software development, but came back to the industry once she started having kids. She has a pretty incredible story of joining her mom's firm, trying to help her shop it to a buyer when she decided to retire, deciding to ultimately buy it, her mom then trying to sell to someone else when they couldn't get on the same page about what it would mean for her to buy the firm, with the end result being her mom pretty much giving her the clients and coming to work for Tara. Tara has a passion for financial therapy and is going through as many of the educational opportunities as she can find to learn how to better help her clients be successful financially and in life. And we talked about those various opportunities. I'll warn you now that Tara is a fast talker, so you may want to slow down the speed on your podcast player a bit, as you're not going to want to miss a word of her journey and how she's built her firm. We're an open book here at XY Planning Network. That's why we're giving you an inside look at our company through our Year 5 annual report. This report is your chance to learn more about Team XYPN, see what our 5th year in business looked like, and take a behind-the-scenes look at our stats, get a sneak peek of what's to come, and more. Download your copy at xyplanningnetwork.com/annual report. You can find any of the additional resources that we mentioned during the episode at xyplanningnetwork.com/210. Also, be sure to go to xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP to join our private group just for XYPN Radio listeners. It's the community of advisors we've all been looking for that's there to provide support when we need it the most. Best of all, it's free. I encourage you to check it out. Again, that's xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP. Without further ado, here's my interview with Tara. Hey, Tara, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for being on.
Oh, thanks for inviting me. It's a pleasure.
So let's give listeners a bit of an overview of you and your practice. So where you're located, number of clients, when you started the firm, and if you have any type of niche market, sort of a quick overview there, and then we'll dig in.
Okay, so I am headquartered in the Los Angeles area, in Torrance, California, to be specific. I have how many clients? I keep counting this. I say 65. It's actually more than 65 people. I have 65 tax clients and I have 65 financial planning clients. Much overlap, but not complete overlap. So there must be like 85 people involved, but I have had a hard time really nailing down exactly how many people that is. And I started my business, South Bay Financial Partners, in December of 2014. And I had a handful of clients, and then I blossomed January 1st, 2017. I onboarded 65 clients, the magic 65 number there. Sort of has been off to the races ever since then. So, I suppose you might want to know a little bit about before 2014 when I started this business, which is I've been in the business.
Yeah, we'll definitely chat about that and onboarding 65 clients, what that means. Do you have any type of niche market or anything like that?
Yeah. So my niche, my marketing is targeted to 20 to 35-year-olds, couples and single. Freelancers is sort of a sub niche, primarily because I also prepare taxes. And so the combination of financial planning, tax preparation, and investment is just perfectly fitted for freelancers who have a large portion of all of those that are really important to keep an eye on. And then I also have 70 plus year olds. A good portion of my clients are between 70 and 95 years old. And there are actually a lot of special needs for post-retirement. Everybody plans for retirement and they think that, they keep their eye on that 65 retire age and then think that it's just distributions after that. And it's not. There's many life transitions after that, where you're going to retire, dealing with grandkids, and, are you going to pay for their college? There's where are you going to live if you need a little more help? How do you transfer from being independent, the go-go years, the slow-go years, and the no-go years? How do you transfer from one to the next of those? And there's tax implication, there's wealth transfer implication, there's adult abuse issues, which I unfortunately have to deal with quite a bit. So there's a whole bunch of issues with that. So those are my two niches. I sort of accidentally got into the 70 plus, and I feel like that's an area that most people don't know very much about, and they really have a big need. So they don't really fit. They're not easy clients, let's put it that way. So I would love to let them go, but there's just not anybody who really is out there who really wants to take care of those people. So I'm here to take care of them and make sure that they get through those senior years smoothly. But we have a lot of fun marketing and dealing with the 20 to 35-year-olds and getting them off to a good start, which is a pivotal. It really, your life success and financial success starts. I actually say when you turn 18. We're hoping to actually get into colleges and high schools to have people start thinking about finances and the day-to-day decisions that they make, so that by the time they graduate, they actually already have somewhat of a foundation and they can get started, not in debt, and having a balanced budget from the get-go. And as you know, our popular saying is, it's really the day-to-day decisions that are going to dictate your financial success more than what you invest in. What you invest in is important, but those day-to-day decisions are going to make or break you in the long run.
Yeah, I love it. All right. Well, let's dig in a little bit on that. So, what was sort of your career path into financial planning? What was the career before financial planning, I guess?
Well, actually, I did have a career. I graduated with a computer science degree from Purdue University way back when, in the dinosaur days. Did that for 8 years, I think. I was on the fast pass to the C-suite and realized that if all I had to say for myself on my deathbed was that I was the CEO of a software company, I would not be very satisfied with my life. So I took a left turn at some point. And also, right around the time that was happening, my husband and I had decided to get married, and we knew that we would have kids. So I grew up with a financial planner mom. That she actually, it was before there was a CFP. She started with preparing taxes for senior. Well, actually, it started with, I found out in the last year or so, it started with my dad becoming consultant. So he was working on his own, wasn't working for a company anymore, was making more money than he had ever been making before. And she knew that she should start a retirement account. And so she opened a retirement account, and then she was trying to figure out what to invest it in. And she asked the people she knew, the bankers and people around her. Nobody really could give her good answers. So she started learning about investments and started investing their money. So that's where she started. Then she learned how to prepare taxes and did that for seniors. And then she got into estate planning, paralegal, and she started teaching classes in financial planning. And then about the time all this was happening, the CFP came into existence, and she was like, I do all that. I could be a CFP. So she got one of the first CFPs and partnered up with a couple of other people and has been doing it forever.
So
from when
you knew about this industry from a very young age, which is rare.
I grew up financial planning. I mean, that was just what we did day to day. We talked about money a lot and how to plan your money, how to save your money, how to plan for the future. Like we did that from, I was probably 2 when we started talking about that. And and actually I have a blog out there called, if you Google bubblegum money on my website, you'll see it, about how I raised my kids. And it started at 2. I started teaching them how to make financial decisions at 2, and sort of, progressively as they developed, gave them a little bit more control over money and money decisions. And I think that's important, and that's how you get on the right track. But so I grew up with that. And I knew when I went off to get my computer science degree that one day when I had kids that I wanted to be a financial planner too, because I saw how I could raise my kids and sort of be a pseudo at-home mom and also have a career. So when my husband and I decided to get married, I switched careers, got my CFP, started working for the family business, and started my own business. So I started my business and sort of did backroom stuff for my mom's business to sort of fill my time and pay the bills in between naps. Started that over 25 years ago. So my oldest son is 25, and I got my CFP when he was a couple months old, and I had gotten the 2 years of experience in before that. So he turns 25. He just turned 25 last week. So 27 years ago, I started on this path. Worked for my own company, and as I said, did backroom, and I did compliance for my mom's business. So one of the things that ended up happening was I was doing compliance, and I had to come up with a succession plan. And I spent a year and a half trying to get a succession plan, and she didn't like any of them. Finally, I said, well, why don't I fold my business into your business, and then I'll just take over when you're ready to retire. I have a feeling she was waiting for that answer. She loved that answer. And so I folded my business into hers, and that was about 20 years ago. Then in 2013, October of 2013, She announced that she was going to retire in 2 years. I said, okay, fine, I'll take over the business. So we spent about a year trying to get me to take over the business, and it was just not working out. And it was very frustrating for me. I think it was frustrating for her. In October of 2014, she announced she was selling the business. And I was like, whoa, what? So I said, well, if you're selling the business, I'm starting my own because I'm not going off someplace else. My whole family is entrepreneurs. My dad was an entrepreneur. My mom was an entrepreneur. My brother's an entrepreneur. I'm an entrepreneur. So I started my own business, and that was 2014, December 2000. It took me 2 months to get that together. So I started my business, got my infrastructure. I had already been in her business. I knew what not to do. I knew what software I didn't want and what software I did want and all of that. So I started building, and I had a couple of my own clients that I extracted from her business also when that happened. And I guess when that happened, we prepare taxes. I prepare taxes. That company prepared taxes. And my mom retired from tax preparation at that point. So I sent a letter to the client saying, if you want, you can come and I'll prepare your taxes. That company is not doing it anymore, but I'm willing to do it if you want. Most of her clients are in Chicago. I'm in LA, and we have people throughout the country. I thought, 10 people would come over. I got 65 tax clients.
So that was the big wave of onboarding.
Well, no, that wasn't.
Oh, no, that was initially.
No,
I gotcha.
That was 2015. So I was in the black basically from the beginning because I had that tax season that was a flood of money all of a sudden. It was unbelievable amount of work. Because I had gone the year before, we were doing it in her business. So there was me, my mom, and she had 3 staff. So there was 5 of us doing it. And then all of a sudden I'm doing all of it and I had no help at all. I was still in my home office. I had no staff. I was, basically it was crazy. It was really crazy, but it got me in the black and it got me, really going, which is great. So it was actually 2 years later then. So she tried to sell the business for a year, got to the end of that and realized that she couldn't sell it anymore than she could give it to me. She just couldn't let go like that. So October of 2016, she announced that she was retiring. And she gave some names of some financial planners that people, or actually they were investment advisors. They weren't really financial planners that people could go to. She didn't know them, but it's like, these are people around town, you can go talk to them. And a couple of them came back and were like, what? These people don't do what you do. It's funny because when I found XYPN, I was like, wow, this is my tribe. Because there's, the world isn't like XYPN. And these people, our clients went to the investment advisors who are not financial planners. And, they just approach things completely differently. And a lot of these people were my tax clients. And so I was hearing these stories, and there was one person who came back to our office and was literally crying. He was so stressed out because he didn't know what to do. And I was like, I can't do this to my clients, to my tax clients. It's not fair. So I said, well, if anybody wants to onboard with me, I'll take them. Again, nobody is in LA. Well, not nobody, but not many are in LA. There's they're mostly in Chicago and they're all over. I thought, again, like 10 come over. Nope, 65 come over. So I'm onboarding January 1st, 2017, onboarding 65 clients, which was some of them I had relationships with because of taxes and because of working with them, in the family business, but a lot of them I didn't. So, I was meeting 30 people for the first time and trying to figure out, where they're at, where they're trying to go, what are their goals, what are their risk tolerance, like all of that for just a huge amount of people, in addition to, getting them into my master account at Schwab or TD Ameritrade, filling out all the paperwork, getting all the contract signed, blah, blah, blah. It was just, and at this point, so yeah, I guess at this point, at the end of like December 26, 2016, I hired my first employee and moved into temporary office space. So while I'm onboarding, I'm also training a new staff member and I'm moving into an office and all of that. So that was crazy.
Try to take on a few stressors all at once.
It was. I don't really remember 2017 very well.
But it laid the foundation for the future, right? So it ends up being worth it, but tough.
And it was interesting because I had spent 2 years putting my infrastructure together, and a year in, December of 2017, so like 12 months after I onboarded all these people, the SEC comes knocking and says, they're doing their 1-year compliance audit to make sure that I'm headed in the right direction and doing all the right things. And I have had SEC audits before in the family business. So I actually consider it a learning experience. It's my opportunity to ask questions and to find out, what I don't know. Because we're not ripping off our clients. So I'm not afraid of getting caught doing something or anything like that. But anyways, yeah, so they come in and it's like, I realized it was a test of my infrastructure, because really the SEC isn't asking you for anything besides things that you should be doing if you're doing best practices in the industry anyways. And so it was a test of, did I put my infrastructure together well? Did I, train my staff well? And at this point, I had 3 staff members. And we were able to reply within a day and a half for all the things that they wanted. And there was only one thing that we were not really keeping track of that we should be keeping track of. But everything else, it was just a push of the button and it popped out and there was no problem. So I felt like that was a test, and I passed my test. So that was exciting.
So just looking back, there's so much awesome stuff we could talk about. Tell me about this experience with your mom of, it sounds like a bit of a seesaw, if you will, of sort of back and forth on what to do. What do you sort of credit that? It's like she knew what she wanted and you weren't there yet, and then you decide you want to buy it. Then she wasn't sure and sell it to someone else. Like how do you feel like that?
So it took me 2 years to figure this out, because I really didn't understand what was going on and why. Like when we talked, it sounded like we were on the same page, but then we weren't. And I realized I wasn't listening to what she was saying. And I was thinking that she would want a legacy. Her company had her name in it, and, it had been around for almost 30 years. I thought she would want to have that legacy continue on. Turned out she couldn't care less about the legacy. She wanted her clients to be taken care of. And that was really all. That's all she wanted. And so me starting my own company was perfectly fine with her, because she didn't need her company to continue on. But what the issue was, that she didn't want me taking over her company. She wanted me taking care of her clients.
Interesting.
Right? Okay. And we've talked a little bit. I study financial therapy, and maybe that's what helped me look at things a little bit differently from a different perspective. But I think that it really does get down to sort of a financial therapy and motivations and ways of viewing things. So, I was living within my construct and what I would want, and I wasn't listening to what she was really saying. Yeah. So she just, as I said, she just wanted me to take care of them. So in the end, when they ended up coming to me, she was thrilled. And as a matter of fact, she works for me now. So, which is pretty fun. And the clients love it, because there's, a little continuity there and everything. It was interesting. And had I realized that I was thinking incorrectly about what her goal was, it would have gone a lot smoother.
Yeah, I'll say that is, without digging further, definitely on the surface, it would be confusing of like, well, why don't, what do you mean you don't want me to run the business? But, again, we have so much tied up in our business, emotionally speaking, and it's not just about the money. It really is just, it's our baby.
Right. And she didn't want me taking that, right? That could go retire with her. Her baby could go retire with her, but she wanted her clients to be taken care of. So could I have figured out a way of doing this, stepping away, starting my business and pulling them over more gracefully? That was really in my court to do, and I didn't do that well.
Okay. So, and just as a way of background, when did you start doing taxes and sort of learn that side of the business? Because it sounds like it's pretty central to what you're doing.
5 years ago, I'd say. Right when I started, that I would, and back then you could go to.
So it was just part of your mom's business already.
Back then, H&R Block had classes that you could go to and learn how to do it. And then, it was a recruitment funnel for H&R Block, but you didn't have to go work for them, but they would hire the best people in the class, basically. But it was a way to get training, and they don't do that anymore. I think it's harder to learn how to do taxes nowadays. Yeah, it was definitely, and it still is. I actually don't understand how people can do investment advice and financial planning without understanding taxes and not just like throwing it in a program, which I do throw it into a program. I use Pro Series. There's no way that anybody can do any of this by hand. But if you don't really understand like the ripple effect that things have within the taxes, because it's not just, your bracket or capital gains taxes or whatever. There's like so many ripple effects, and it changes every year. And I just don't understand how you can really understand the effect of the things that you're doing without knowing taxes, without preparing taxes.
So you had a few transition points in here, and obviously starting the firm, bringing some clients over. It sounds like, you said you brought over 65 tax clients. Sounds like you brought over 65 financial planning clients in 2017. And is that still your core base? Are you really growing beyond that, or have you sort of stalled or pushed pause on growth and sort of getting your feet under you?
So a couple of things have happened. First of all, because I have 70 to 95-year-olds, I lose one or two every year. As a matter of fact, I just recently, within the last month, lost two, which I'm pretty sad about. I do have attrition because of that. I fired one client who I was working with his mother, and then he took over his handling his mother's affairs. And of course, he fired me. So I have lost a couple of clients for one reason or another since then. And I've replaced all of those and gotten more. One thing is I haven't been trying to bring on clients. First of all, 2017 was a whirlwind, and I couldn't even think about doing that. In 2018 was probably when I started like getting my head above water. And I haven't been marketing for the traditional financial planning clients, but I have onboarded, I don't know, 5 or 7 of them just by accident, because I'm really targeting the 20 to 35-year-old. So we've been really focused on that. And what we've been doing for that is I have a closed Facebook group called Let's Talk About Money that I invite that age group in to ask any questions and have conversations. And then I post things that they, for them to think about, little exercises, general financial planning, financial therapy, tax advice, that kind of thing within there. And to try to, my goal is to get as much financial planning to as many people as I can for an affordable price. So it started out with this closed Facebook group, which will be morphing into another platform that I'm trying to decide what to put it on. I'm looking at 4 different platforms right now that will be, I'll probably end up charging about $50 a month to be in that environment. And it will be an environment that's sort of like a do-it-yourself financial planning environment where we show you how to do everything and you do it. You can ask questions though, and there's will be experts there to guide you along also. And then if you want, you can hire us as our financial coaching services, which our financial coaching services we kicked off in 2018. And we have, I don't know, 8 people in that program. And that is teaching the basics of financial planning. So we have 3 different levels of financial coaching: bronze, silver, and gold. Bronze is just teaching you how to budget, spending less than you make, starting an emergency fund, and sort of getting the very basics of getting started. Start in, if you have debt, dealing with debt and how to look at debt and integrate that into your plan. And then when you've got your budget down, then we move you up to silver, which is developing what I call an opportunity fund, which is the money that you need to buy a car when you want to buy a car, go to weddings when your friends start getting married, which in this age group, you go through these flurries of all of a sudden 4 people are getting married in 1 year, and you have 4 destination weddings and presents and things. So, building up an opportunity fund so that when those kinds of things come up, you can go do them and you have money. That you have money to pay for that without busting your budget and using the credit card. And then when you got that sorted down, then when you go to the gold, and the gold level is really starting to build assets. And we say that you should be working for your money until your money is working for you and paying your expenses. So that's all about asset allocation. And when you accomplish that, then we call that retirement. Whenever that happens, when your money is paying you your salary, then you can, you're financially independent and you can do whatever you want. So the gold level, we're working on that, getting investment accounts set up, figuring out the whole retirement thing, which we deal with retirement accounts obviously from the very beginning, but that's where we're really sort of fine tuning and getting really making a long-term plan. And then also if you're planning on getting married, having kids, planning for college, buying a house, all of that kind of stuff ends up happening in the gold level. So we've been working on that. We've been working on developing that. We had an alpha test on it, a beta test, and now it's been officially launched and it's working, and it's in process and working, and we're making a difference in people's lives, which is really, really exciting to me.
So just so I'm clear, the silver or the bronze, silver, gold plans, is that just through the Facebook group, or is that part of the planning process and you're sort of layering in different options, or are they separate brands? So how is that in your typical financial planning process all tied together?
Very, very good question. So yeah, it's separate from the Facebook group. So my ultimate vision is that this environment, the do-it-yourself one, it's almost like a marketing funnel where people come in there and they can find out, who I am, what I'm about, and learn about the basics of financial planning and getting your financial life in order. And then if that's all you need, then you stay there. You go no further. But if you want to have a little bit more help, or you have a little bit more complexity than just a vanilla kind of person, then you would step out into the financial coaching realm. So to me, I don't really care where people go. I want to give everybody a price point that they can afford and services that meet their needs. So depending on what your needs are and what your resources are, you're going to fit in somewhere. And you're probably going to start in the environment and then step into coaching, but it might be the other way around. And then the coaching is designed specifically so that when you're ready to graduate out of gold, and we're hoping that we do actually have like a graduation ceremony out of gold, you graduate into financial planning, the traditional financial planning model, because you will need that at that point. You now have all your basic financial skills down. You have, and really, I study habits. And I think that really your life runs on habits. So I feel you need to be intentional about what your habits are. And so part of the financial coaching process is developing habits that will make you financially successful and your life success. And really, we look at making a successful life and layering finances on top of it, not the other way around. We're trying to help you develop habits that will make you successful in life and successful in your finances.
So what are you finding? I guess it's a little probably too early to talk about how people are moving between those different groups, but what has been the initial interest and that sort of thing for some of those different levels of planning, and sort of what you're seeing coming down the pipeline?
A few different things. So a lot of the people who come to us at first have just graduated, so they're just starting to get some money, and they don't know what to do with it, and they don't know even how to think about it, and they don't know, they get these benefit plans at work, and they have retirement, and they have the insurance and all of that, and what do you do with all of that? So we help them through that, and we help them figure out their budget. That's where it really starts. Is what is your budget? How much are you going to spend on living, and how much are you going to allocate to saving, and what kind of saving? And build your emergency fund, start saving for retirement, et cetera. So a lot of people come in at that level, and it's the bronze level, and it's pretty straightforward. There are definitely some people who are a little bit older and they're not at that level. They've been out of school for a while. They actually have money, some invested, some not invested, some in retirement, some not in retirement, and they don't know what to do. And so we help them, and so I'm thinking of one person in particular that definitely spends like very frugal person, very, very frugal person. So has, the retirement plan maxed out, has, savings, has a investment account, but he doesn't know how much he can spend and like what are the boundaries, and and he's afraid to spend more because he doesn't know if he has enough, kind of thing. So we help with that. We help him set his boundaries and what is he comfortable with and what is his goals, and and all of that. So people can come in at any level. And to be quite honest, we have almost as many people who are 50 plus in this program too, which is not what we were thinking we were going to have happen. And those are really people who, as I say, didn't get the memo when they were 20, so nobody taught them how to do all of this before. And so now they're in debt, and now they have, a bunch of issues that they have to deal with. And maybe they're in retirement, maybe they're about to retire, maybe they have kids, all sorts of stuff. So they usually come in at the gold level, but really they're sort of bronze. But they usually have assets. That's the thing. So that's usually what puts them in gold, is that they actually have investable assets. So if you have investable assets, we need to be doing investments, then you have to be in gold. There's just no way to get around that. But we go back to the bronze level and help them with their budgeting and spending less than they make and figuring out their goals and, how to organize the way they think about their money. But what we found is that people who come into coaching at that age tend to have a lot of financial therapy issues that you need to work with. They have money stories in their head that were appropriate at one point in their life, but are not appropriate now. And so we need to work through that and get those roadblocks out of the way so that they can move forward successfully. And it's a bit of a challenge.
Fantastic. Trying to think the best direction to go now. There's so many different things we could talk about. Let's talk about financial therapy, because this is a passion of mine. As listeners know, I was brought in to financial planning by a therapist, Dr. Getz, out of Georgia, and just didn't know any different. I just thought all financial planners were financial therapists. And then I interviewed with a guy who very pompously said he wrote a book on financial therapy. And I was like, well, I'm using that book in my class. And when I looked at it, I realized he wasn't being pompous. He wrote the book. And so my first job was with Rick Kaler, who had written Facilitating Financial Health. And when I worked with him, we had a therapist on staff that was available for some of the issues that we had. I'll never forget one meeting when something got thrown across the office at her husband, and just being like, oh, welcome to real financial planning, where there's emotions and there's challenges to overcome. It's not just, go do this and then they go do it and everyone's happy. So you've talked a bit about financial therapy. I'll say the typical profile of a person who loves financial therapy may not be someone who got into software development and tax and that sort of thing, right? And that if we were creating this generic profile, which would clearly be wrong. So how did you get into this and sort of develop a passion and an expertise around the concepts of financial therapy?
I think it probably has to do with the fact that I'm a mom. And so, I had to figure out how to motivate my kids and, organize things. And so I think it probably started with raising the kids. And I have to say that, the family business and my mom has always been, we take care of our clients. So, I go to conferences and things, and topics come up, and financial planners will say, well, I'm not a therapist. And I always think, well, you sort of are. You're sort of like that bartender. Like, you're the person that they're going to, when their spouse died or when, something happens. And you can't ignore the fact that there's emotions. Well, and actually money is emotions, right? So everything about our business deals with emotions. And if you ignore that, you're ignoring like the elephant in the room. So how did I get involved in it? I don't know. I think I'm just curious about people and their motivations. And I learn from other people. It was funny, when I was in my 20s, somebody was reading my palm and they said that you learn from other people's mistakes. And I'm like, well, doesn't everybody? And now, 30 years later, I'm like, no, not everybody. Some people don't learn from their own mistakes. I do. I pay attention to what's going on, and I learn from other people's mistakes and try to figure out, what their motivation is. And I've always been like that. So I think that's probably part of where it came from. And I want to help people. And if if somebody has trouble controlling their expenses, I can tell them to stop doing that till I'm blue in the face, but that's not going to change them. So how am I going to change them? And I actually originally got into behavioral economics. I'm a big, huge Morningstar fan, and they are forward thinking on this, and they have a whole department. And Sarah Newcomb is my hero, who's over there doing a lot of research and writes a lot of paper and gives a lot of really great advice. So I started with her, and then read as much as I could about behavioral science as I could, behavioral economics. And then it was actually on Michael's podcast that the president of the FTA was on, and she was talking. I was like, oh my God, that's what I do. And so I looked into it. That was like a year and a half ago. And I looked into it, and I was like, it was just like finding XYPN. And I was like, this is my tribe. I found FTA, and I was like, this is my tribe. I just like, these people are thinking the same way I am. And we're just trying to help people and help people make better money decisions and live more successful lives and have better relationships and, be able to communicate better so that you can make decisions better. Because if you don't, it gets back to like my mom and I trying to transition from finishing her going into retirement. If I had listened better, if I had communicated better, that would have gone more smoothly. So learning some tools that can help you help people do that is like gold to me.
Yeah. So for listeners who are not aware, FTA, Financial Therapy Association, started, when I was in college, because I went to the first ever conference. So I think maybe 10 years ago, 10, 12 years ago now. And it is the organization for financial planners, academics, and therapists and social workers to really collaborate on these concepts of the crossover between money and psychology and recognizing that money is emotional, and there is no way of talking about money without talking about people's emotions. To your point, like, you may not want to be a therapist, but we are counselors, we are mediators, we are, there to facilitate a lot of these things that clients are going through because we're the ones they talk about money to, because you know what? They can't talk to their therapist about money because their therapist doesn't know anything about money. And, normally you can't talk to your financial planner about anything emotional because we don't know anything about emotions and communication and all of that. And so it's really about blending those two. So one challenge I always had, that we experienced in our firm when we were offering these services, was just the level of expense of having two professionals in the room. Because in the end, your time is very valuable, and a therapist's time is very valuable, and having both of you in the room at the same time is a challenge. So how are you incorporating some of the financial therapy techniques and learnings and such without making it so prohibitively expensive that folks, just aren't able to access it?
Yeah, so really good point, and I am trying to work on it. And part of it is that just me having the tools, can get you quite a bit of the distance. So, instead of wasting meetings talking about how you should put more money in your retirement account, which is really just wasting time, we can talk about other things that will actually cause money to go into the retirement account because they've gotten rid of a roadblock that's preventing them from doing that. So in some ways, if you just have some tools in your back pocket, so that, and it's funny because I think it was Michael that was talking about problem clients, and my response to that is that they're not problems to clients. It's that you're using financial planning tools when you need another set of tools to deal with this problem. So yeah, but we have had this discussion because what you just said, we were analyzing the financial coaching workflow, and is it profitable, and how much time are we spending on it, and how are we going to price it, and all of that. And we realized that we do have these two pockets of financial coaching people. We have the younger people who usually fly through things, and you tell them to do something and they do it, or if they don't, it's pretty easy to get them there. And then the 50-year-olds have these blocks, and you have to work through the blocks. And so it takes, what might take one meeting for a 20-year-old might take 5 meetings for a 50-year-old, because you have to get over the money stories that they have in their head and put new money stories in before you can get to that point. So we realized that we probably do have to do a different pricing model. And as I said, we're just developing it. The financial coaching was just launched last year, and we're fine tuning it every month, every quarter. So it will change, but we're thinking that we'll probably have sort of an offshoot that people will have the option of taking, that will be a little bit more expensive, that we will spend more time on the money story conversations, because we realize we have all kinds of clients. And there's one client that we realized she might be willing to pay extra to go through that process, or she might say, you know what, I have to suck this up and get on the ball because I don't want to pay that money. And therefore I'll figure this out. We have tools that we can give them to help them help themselves. So she sort of has that option. And also I have thought about, actually just last week, a psychologist moved into the office next door, and ironically, her undergrad is in finance and she switched to psychology. I thought that was brilliant. And I think I might be tapping in on her, because one thing that I do know is that therapists can actually charge through insurance. And so it's not coming out of the client's pocket. So if I can get it, I'm going to therapists, the MFT, the Marriage and Family Therapist Association group that meets in the town that I'm headquartered in. I go there and meet financial therapists, just mental health therapists, and hoping to get relationships so that I can, if somebody needs that, they can go to them, and then their insurance will pay for it. And that will make it more affordable. So it's definitely something that's on our radar. And I'm actually, so just a little side story about, getting into this business. When my mom said that she was going to be selling the business, I was actually at a fork in the road, because I could retire if I wanted to. My husband is a rocket scientist. He makes plenty of money. We have plenty of retirement money. The last 2 children are graduating, this month. So no, college is already paid for and behind us. So I really didn't need to work if I didn't want to. And if I started my own business, I figured I was in for 30 years. I wasn't going to make a commitment to new clients if I wasn't in it for 30 years. Should I do that or should I not? It just happened. I went to see my doctor, and he said, he doesn't know I'm a financial planner. He said, just so that you plan properly for your retirement, you are in good health and you take care of yourself, you will live till 125. And I thought, 125, holy, I'll be bored out of my skull in 30 years if I don't continue working. So that was when I decided to continue working.
Actually, I want to ask about that because that is an interesting inflection point that not a lot of people, have put themselves in the position of being able to take advantage of. So you're sitting there, you know you can retire, you have that opportunity, and you think about, and I mean, you're not just evaluating like, oh, I go get a job. Like this is starting a business and building something because it doesn't sound like you're interested in just like you with 20 clients making 100 grand, right? So how did you, I mean, was it really just like you just didn't want to be bored and recognize you could have this impact and let's go for it? Or was it a conversation with your husband and trying to decide what was going to be best for the two of you?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, interesting. He did support me all along the way. And I guess that was what I was pointing out is I'm not doing this for the money. I don't need the money. And so I can afford to play with this financial coaching and figure out how to make it profitable and not have to be profitable from the beginning. Like that's okay with me. I have that luxury, which is really nice. But yeah, so I'm a Girl Scout and Boy Scout. I want to make the world a better place. Yeah, I'm curious, and I like to learn new things and do things. I love taxes. I have an MBA. I love building things. I'm an entrepreneur, as I said. My family is an entrepreneur. I love building things and watching them thrive. So yeah, I do stuff for fun, and I'm having a ton of fun.
So what do you envision building towards? I guess right now you have, did you say 4 or 5 team members?
I have, yeah, I have 4 other employees besides myself right now. Yeah.
So there's 5 of you now. What are you building towards? Because you have the flexibility financially that you can stop growing, you can grow big, you can spend money doing this. I mean, what are you really building the firm to be, and what do you want it to be when it grows up?
Yeah. That's a really great question. And so, yeah, I think about that, as I said, I have an MBA, so I think of strategic plans and business plans, and that's just how my brain works. So yeah, my ultimate goal is that I would like to bring somebody in that wants to become a partner, and then at that point, when they're there and they're established, I have the choice of walking away or staying or semi-retiring or doing whatever I want to do. So that's the ultimate goal, and what I'd like, I don't want anything big. I'm not looking for a $1 billion corporation or anything. I'm looking, as I said before, my goal is to help as many people get financial planning in an affordable way as possible. And so that I have laser like focus on that, and how that, I have all sorts of ideas in my head, and I have to say my brain sometimes just goes in a whirl, and I'm testing them out, and I'm trying this and seeing if it works and does that work, and sort of talking to a bunch of people, and I just know, it's becoming more and more crystallized. I'm in a couple of mastermind groups too, who are very helpful, and it's crystallizing. And I know at some point it's going to become something that's working and that is providing help for a lot of people and is profitable enough to, be a real business and not a charity. And that's my goal.
So, what are some of the bigger projects, I guess, that you're working on right now? Obviously, launching the new groups and the different levels for financial coaching is big. You mentioned in the pre-call that you're wrapping up the Financial Therapy Association certification and some of the work there. So looking over the next 12 to 24 months, you sound like a person who always has, 15 or 20 projects being juggled all at once. So, which I can totally relate to. What do you feel like is sort of next for you and your company?
Well, we're working on this environment. That's the next thing, launching something sort of like the XYPN community, which I would assume a lot of the people on here are members of the XYPN and they know the discourse community. So it's something sort of like that for, as I said, people who want to do it yourself. And note that part of this is, as a matter of fact, I heard somebody else who did something sort of similar, but in the yoga world. And she wanted to provide as much free yoga to the world as possible. And she said, my goal was to make an environment where it was Mr. Rogers' neighborhood for yoga. And that's sort of how I feel about this, is I want to have this environment that's sort of like the Mr. Rogers of financial planning. It's a safe space to come into, even if you hate thinking about finances, even, if it totally stresses you out, like this is a comfortable place for you to come and find out things and be more comfortable and, work on those money stories that you have and make them productive and, make progress going forward and stop, sort of get rid of the roadblocks. And it's not odious and it's not like, those numbers again, but it's it's enriching, and it puts you in the driver's seat and puts you in control, so that it's not finances and the world happens to you, but you plan and are in control of your finances. That's my goal.
How do you scale community around money, or sort of what's in your mind for how you do this? Because in the end, money is the last taboo in our culture. Talking to someone you trust about money is hard enough. And for anybody, I think everybody listening to this knows how challenging it is to get people to open up about it. Just go ask your mom how much money she makes. You see how challenging it is. So how do you get people to open up and communicate about money, maybe even total strangers or maybe they're friends, but in a community environment? How do you create that safe space?
I don't know. And I'm actually still developing it. And interestingly, it's easier for older people so far than younger people. But and this is where I'm having a roadblock with my Facebook group, because I think that part of what's holding us back is Facebook. Facebook is not a great environment for this at all, but it was, easy, and it was a place for us to start and like just sort of get it going. So I think that I'll be able to make a lot more progress off Facebook. And it might be that part of what we're looking into for the environment is to have like rooms that you can go off to and have private conversations, or maybe Zoom meetings that you go off to, or, something like that, so that you can have generic conversations. But, people talk about money all the time. If you think about it, like cocktail parties, or you go to these workshops, or, these women workshops and things. Once you get started, it's just that initial getting over the hump of being embarrassed, or I don't even know what it is, but you can usually, once people start talking about money, they really sort of enjoy it. Actually, my Facebook group is called Let's Talk About Money, because people don't talk about money. And I say that that's one of the biggest problems. And, I came from a wealthier background. And to be quite honest, I feel like wealthy people talk about money all the time. And I think that's part of why they are wealthier. And part of it is that they're focused on money. So, if you keep your eye on the ball, you're going to be more successful. And that's part of why people aren't successful, is because they're not really keeping their eye on the ball. So, and which is part of what our financial coaching is making it easy to keep your eye on the ball. But yeah, you don't have to talk about money all the time. You don't even have to really enjoy talking about money, but you do have to talk about money. And especially if you're like in a relationship, in a couple that doesn't talk about money is a couple that's going to be, have problems down the road. And any relationship is like that. And really, people don't want to talk about money because they think that's going to cause problems. But not talking about money can cause more problems than talking about money. So I'm really trying to take off that, sort of normalize talking about money and making it not taboo. That, we all have to deal with it. We all have these, we all have to have a budget. We all have to spend less than we make. We all have, things that we have to pay for. So why don't we talk about it and try to get the best solutions for me? And the problem also is that the best solution for me is not going to be the best solution for you. Sort of like on Michael brought up the coffee question. Do you tell your client not to buy, save the money on not buying the latte every morning? And to me, that's a financial therapy question, because that, $5 that they spend on that might be socialization for them, and it might be the cheapest socialization. It might keep them out of the therapist's office. And, now you've just saved yourself a bunch of money by doing that $5 coffee. So it's not the coffee, it's the, the motivation behind it, it's the reason behind it. It's are you being thoughtful about how you're spending that money, or are you just, throwing away money without thinking about it, and therefore wasting money on things that aren't actually satisfying to you, and then you don't have money to do things that are satisfying to you. That's where we're trying to get to.
And that's what Elizabeth Dunn's research. So she spoke at our conference last year, but, with Happy Money and how to spend money in ways that does bring you happiness. They say, anything over $75,000 doesn't bring you happiness, which is not true. It's that we are just really terrible as human beings at spending money in ways that actually bring us happiness. We tend to shortchange ourselves. And like I said, we spend money in ways that just aren't satisfying. And then we sort of get into this, this downward spiral.
Well, and also we're spending money to keep up with the Joneses, which you'll never do, because there's always a Jones more, wealthier than you are. But also by buying that car that keeps up with them, but you don't really even care about cars. So now you've just wasted all that money on something that you don't even really care about. It's just, it ends up being, you end up frustrating yourself because you're using role model. And actually, Sarah Newcomb did a paper on this also, picking your role models carefully. And that people who pick role models, that people that they want to be like instead of like the rock stars. You know, do you really want to be like Kanye? I know I personally do not, but, and you put them on the pedestal and think that that's what you want to be, when really you really don't want to live that life. What you really want to live the life of is your uncle. Your uncle has the best life, and he's happy and he has a great family and blah, blah, blah. Looking at him as your role model makes your life more satisfying than picking somebody that seems, like a Warren Buffett or something like that, that's not really realistic and just ends up being frustrating more than anything.
Yeah, I totally agree. And like I said, the Joneses are frequently going bankrupt, so you can keep up all the way to the end. So I guess as you look back over your last few years in business, you have taken a bit of a unique path, in that there was the family business and really were able to build there. But obviously that was not an easy road. It was just a different road than many folks take. But, if you look back over your last several years in business, what do you look at as some of your biggest wins and your biggest failures? Things that listeners who are on this journey or thinking about starting this journey can learn from and maybe, copy in terms of successes, or maybe help avoid in terms of failures.
Hiring, when you're hiring staff, make sure, and it's funny because I was a manager in my software years, and I've hired a ton of people, and I was very proficient, and I would go for the smartest people. And, I was pretty good at hiring a good staff in the computer world. And then when I started hiring people in my company, I wasn't doing that. I wasn't hiring people who were super smart. Part of it was I was a little intimidated that they would be smarter than me. And I don't know why I was intimidated by that. Part of it was that I didn't feel I could afford them. Well, I couldn't afford them actually at that point. I can afford a lot more now than I could when I started. You end up wasting time, wasting money if you don't hire the best. So I actually upped my prices about 50% this year, specifically because I told all my clients that I can't hire quality staff without, money. Quality people cost money, and I want to be proud of the work I do, and therefore I need to have a staff that can help me do that. And they all balked at it, but they all came back, so that was pretty cool. But yeah, so hiring people that are smarter than you, that you think are smarter than you, is, I think, a key. And definitely, well, and this is something that I learned back 30 years ago, 40 years ago in my past life. Understand what your weaknesses are and make sure you get them covered. If you're not good at people stuff, hire somebody who's good at people stuff. If you're not good at marketing, hire somebody that's good at marketing. Like, figure out what you're not good at and make sure you cover your weaknesses, or else you're going to be in big trouble. And what I see a lot of people do is hire people who are like them and who have the same strengths as them. And that is the biggest mistake you can make. You definitely need to have a well-rounded crew. And I actually think that diversity is really important. So I hire people who are different ages, different ethnicities, if I can hire somebody that has nothing in common with anybody else on the staff, I feel like I've done a really good job. So, and that's because everybody brings in something different. My assistant advisor has a Hispanic mom, and he was telling me that in that culture, you take care of your kids, and then when they grow up, they take care of you. And therefore, you never really have to have a retirement account because you'll be taken care of. Like, you don't have to plan for your retirement. Your family will take care of you. So that's a completely different way of thinking about things that, like, we need to know as financial planners, especially when we're dealing with people from that culture. Having people from different backgrounds and different experiences, I think, is super important. So diversity can't ever have enough, as far as I'm concerned. And it's some of the things one of the things that's been really rewarding for me is the financial therapy and going into a talk with some of the 70-plus-year-olds. And I ask different questions from that point of view. It was funny because there was one client that I had the new contract, which is, significantly increase in fees. And she's the couple is very thrifty, and they were very upset about it. And the contract was on the table at the start of our meeting, and we had our meeting. And at some point I had a conversation about, your next life transition. If you need more help, and do you want to have help come into your home? Do you want to go to a retirement home? What do you want that to look like? Where do you want it to be? Do you want to be by your kids? Do you want to be here? et cetera. So we had this conversation, and she was just like, I don't know. How can I know that? And she just went on and on. And then I said, I'm not asking for an answer right now. I'm asking you to think about it, because I should know, and your children should know what that's going to look like, what you want. I want to know. I want you to make that decision and to give us that information, and not get to a point where you can't make that decision. Somebody makes it for you, and we don't know what you want. So that's I'm putting it on the table for that. And at the end, she said, she signed the contract, and she said, "You are so worth this money." And I thought, well, isn't that interesting? But it was just that I was approaching it from a different point of view, and I felt like by the end, she was given the space to express things that she was worried about, and she had never really been given that space before, and she appreciated having that. So I thought that was really interesting, that people do want to talk to us about more than just the money. They do want to talk about what they're worried about in their future. And just, I don't have the answers for her. All I can do is ask the questions. But if I can give her the room to have that conversation, it just makes her go away more in control of her life, which is what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah, I think it's important to note there some of what you're talking about, that, clients just want to be heard. And my definition of financial planning is we help our clients live their great lives. And we are the only ones who actually ask them, what do you want out of life? It's not about when do you want to retire and how much money do you need in retirement? Do you need insurance? It's what do you want to accomplish? What's the legacy you want to leave? What's the impact you want to have on the world? And then using money as a tool to support their version of a great life, and really digging in and understanding that. And to your point, you're the first person to ask her, what do you really want? And people don't ask that question, and we don't even think about it. And then, suddenly you're the smartest person in the room because you asked that question. As we're sort of coming to a close, and I appreciate you sharing some of your wins and losses, over the last couple of years. If you think back to your younger self and back to maybe when you were starting the business or a couple of years ago, whenever this was for you, but if you could go back and give your younger self one piece of advice, one thing you wish you had known then that you know now, what do you think that piece of advice would be?
It would get back to that, listening to my mother as to what she wanted. And I guess this gets back to one of my favorite books is Daniel Kahneman's Thinking Slow and Fast, the biases that we have. And one of the things that I got out of there that I do all the time now, and I wish I had done back then, is, looking at the problem and then looking at the opposite of the problem. Because you tend to, when you look at a problem, you often are in, that monkey brain, and you have like a bias and a preconception of what you think the answer is. And if you think about the opposite of it, you think about it in a completely different way and get completely different answers. And usually it's a average of the two that is reality. And I wish I had taken the time to say, okay, if legacy isn't the issue, what is the issue? And I would have come to the realization that I was going down the wrong path and that I should be doing something different. So now I do that all the time. Whenever I look at something, I always think, what's the opposite of that? And what does that look like? Or if I'm totally wrong on this, what would be right? And just open it up for possibilities.
Well, fantastic. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show and share your journey and wisdom, and look forward to seeing the next year or two of success and growth, especially with this new program. So thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me on. Appreciate it.
We're an open book here at XY Planning Network. That's why we're giving you an inside look at our company through our Year 5 annual report. This report is your chance to learn more about Team XYPN, see what our 5th year in business looked like, and take a behind-the-scenes look at our stats, get a sneak peek of what's to come, and more. Download your copy at xyplanningnetwork.com/annual report. Be sure to join our VIP community at xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP to hang out with other XYPN radio listeners, ask questions for future mailbag episodes with myself and Kitsis, and to finally find a community of like-minded financial advisors. Thanks so much for joining me today. We'll see you next time.
You're not alone, and you're not crazy. It's scary starting, building, and growing your own financial planning firm. And that's why we put together a free private community just for you, the Cutting Edge Financial Planner. Go to xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP or text XYPN Radio to 33344 and join a network of thousands ready to change the lives of Gen X and Gen Y clients.